The first bit of news is that Ava DuVernay, I think I'm pronouncing her last name right, is set or is in negotiations, like the final negotiations, to direct the Jack Kirby comic that he created for DC called The New Gods for Warner Brothers. So yeah, everyone's on a big Jack Kirby, and rightfully so, on a big Jack Kirby kick. I didn't realize until watching these special features for Thor Ragnarok that they did pay a lot of homage within Sakaar, like with the colors, to Jack Kirby in that way. But yeah, this
Thor's always been in my head. It's been Kirby and Walt Simonson are the two people that you most associate with doing runs on the character. Ava DuVernay, we should mention, is the director who just did A Wrinkle in Time.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So based off of that movie, which I know didn't get number one in the box office over the last weekend, but it lost to another Disney-owned film in Black Panther in its fourth week, still at number one, which is incredible.
Which I think is funny because wasn't she rumored at one point to be doing Black Panther?
Oh, I don't know.
I know she was doing a Marvel movie. I don't know if it was that one or if it was Captain Marvel. That sort of, I mean, there's a part of me that if I was her, first off, I mean, wouldn't be doing this, but it's like you hear about like the actors who they get asked if there's one thing that you regret. I could see that being the case for her, but at the same time, I don't see Black Panther being the same movie if she directed it as opposed to Ryan Coogler.
And that's the thing is you have to know, okay, yeah, I could have done Black Panther, but it wouldn't have been the same Black Panther. That doesn't mean it wouldn't have been still successful. It may have just been another version of success. It may have been as big, bigger, not as big. It's hard to say. You can't worry so much about the regret. You just see it as, well, what is my next opportunity and what can I do that's going to gather my interest? The New Gods is interesting in a lot of ways. One, because it's a very Thorish property. It's gods, it's that space thing. So it feels, in my mind, closer to what was just done with Thor Ragnarok as I'm picturing it. Yeah. That kind of film, which makes sense. To see what she will do with it to make it her own is important. But she has said before that her favorite character in comics is Big Barda, who is from the New Gods and is married to Mr. Miracle. And she says for many reasons, Big Barda is her favorite character. That's the kind of thing that I like to hear, is that she's not coming at this as, oh, well, I wanted to do a superhero movie. Here's my opportunity to do a superhero movie and just plug me into one and everything. And I'll do whatever I want with it. This is someone who has a genuine interest in these characters, who has a knowledge of them and probably has a vision for this going in, which frankly is still something that the DC movies, I feel, have been missing overall. Yeah. Not across the board, but in most of the cases. There's also, I guess, no word on if this is going to be connected in any way to the greater DC cinematic universe, which is probably right now good.
Yeah, here's sort of the thing I'm thinking about this, because it said in here, in the article from Deadline, there's no connection to any other DC properties right now, where studio boss Toby Emmerich and his newly installed DC production president Walter Hamada are moving forward with new approach to filmmakers on their DC-based fare. What I honestly think they could do as an easier thing is just do a freaking good movie, movies based on these characters. Like Shazam, don't have it set in the, with this big connective tissue. Now it gets tricky when you get to the core Justice League characters, or even the Trinity, of Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, because a lot of their stuff is heavily intertwined.
But think about how opposite that is from what we've been saying for the last few years about DC, and in relation to the DC filmverse versus the TV DC universe. And there's going to be this Batgirl movie, but does it actually have anything to do with the Ben Affleck Batman? at all. And we have been saying you need to have a tied in universe. I've complained personally about, do the shows actually tie into the movies for Marvel at this point? Is Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. ever going to spin the other way and reconnect? Is the Defenders universe on Netflix actually going to interact with the film universe at any point in time? So it's funny to see now this opposite viewpoint of just make a good movie and don't worry about tying it in, which I don't disagree with you on, but I feel like it's cheapening out because we're just so desperate for them to do some multiple good DC movies at this point instead of just having the one success. I say success by my opinion, not by financial success. Obviously, while not what people wanted to see, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Justice League were all successful. Suicide Squad was successful, to some degree, and I don't want to harp on it and not be honest at the same time.
Yeah, because you're right. It is weird, but I guess because this is where I see, if they were to do these movies, okay. I watched a YouTube video earlier today about it's from a wrestling YouTube channel, and it was talking about how the Undertaker's streak should have ended, and it's like they did it in this beautiful way of, well, let's open up a wormhole here and look at this universe, and then finally they get to this one, and I'm like, actually, that makes a lot of sense. So this is going to be me doing a little bit of that, opening up, because this is how honestly I would have done the DC side of things, the DC movie franchise. If we're I would almost do like they have done in the beginning, make some different changes, not have Zack Snyder direct the first 3 fucking movies, not because he's a bad director, but to copy what works over at Marvel, to put it in a cheap way, of getting other directors to get other tastes in. And actually, I probably would have had Zack Snyder do the Justice League movie, not do Superman and then do Batman versus Superman, but have him be the DC Joss Whedon here.
Yeah, to be fair, Snyder really was telling a continuing story of his Superman character. And since Justice League wound up out of his hands eventually, we never really did see where he was continuing it into. But it all was kind of one story from him. They didn't have him direct Wonder Woman other than having his hands in the final act of it, which is apparent when you're watching it, and to me, kind of the biggest shortcoming of the film. But again, I don't want to pick on him. It's just like, it's very jarring when you see that happen. Suicide Squad, same thing. They got someone else to direct it. They had Snyder's involvement in a Joss Whedon-esque type of thing. I don't think that that's not what they did. It's just that they went all in so much with him from the beginning.
Yeah.
That nothing else really felt as impactful as what his presence was in those films and in that universe until Wonder Woman became a runaway hit.
Yeah, but then, so I'm going to continue down this thing here of where you get the directors who have different visions on these type of characters. Basically, you do not the Justice League, but the Trinity. So you do Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman with their own movies, but there's these little Easter egg things, not full on blatantly like, oh, they're all in the same universe. Meanwhile, while we're doing that, we also have the, to a degree, lesser characters, the Flashes, Aquamans, Green Lanterns, all these other movies that they're announcing, the New Gods, and have them in these, just as movies, like, hey, we're doing these movies, they're these great ideas. And then if all of them succeed, like if the Shazam movie succeeds, well then, hey, guess who's going to be appearing in Justice League 2? Shazam. And who's going to be the villain? Well, it's going to be The Rock playing Black Adam and stuff like that. To where you get that way, to where it's, because there's enough stuff that you could do with these properties to make them separate, but tie them in if need be.
Right. And that's the problem, is that the main line through the DC Universe films have been all stemming from Superman to then Superman versus Batman with Wonder Woman, and then to Justice League. So
and it's honestly
when you look at Ant-Man, when you look at Black Panther, when you look at the first movie for each of the individual Avenger characters, they don't have each other to rely on. They all tell their own stories, but you get those little bits of flavor in there that make you go, "Oh, this is part of a bigger universe." And then they take that as the foundation and they build something else. And that DC unfortunately seemed to do it backwards, which has been a complaint from the beginning. But that's neither here nor there. The only thing that I do have to say, though, is that in Justice League, we were given this doorway into what was supposed to be the New Gods. We were supposed to be seeing Darkseid. Steppenwolf and the Mother Boxes were supposed to be leading into that. So for them to be talking about doing a New Gods movie and then saying, yeah, but it doesn't really have anything to do with the stuff that we were going to do with Justice League, which I can understand. Step back from that. It wasn't done in the film anyways, but it was very obvious that that's where they were trying to go, at least in Snyder's original vision. It seems odd to me to not utilize it. It would be the same thing as saying, at this point, after having been cast in the role for the last 5 years and still not showing up in anything, including it looks like the new Shazam movie, to not have The Rock as Black Adam ever fight Shazam. It seems like it would be a very odd move to not utilize the characters interacting with each other, especially ones that are meant to, or ones that have their in. The other thing about Justice League, though, is, like, do you remember all the posters that said Unite the Seven? Like, I'm not the greatest mathematician in the world, but who was number fucking 7?
Wait,
was it Alfred? Was it the box? Yeah, all the posters for originally in the Justice League were Unite the Seven, and we never got a 7. Not the 7 C's. Yeah, I don't even know that fucking Aquaman ever made it into salt water in that movie. It seemed like Atlantis was about 20 feet deep, which is deeper than the script. I feel like there's a lot of... I'm just saying, give me the Zack Snyder's cut. No, I'm not saying that at all. But it does seem like there was another Justice League movie that was supposed to happen, and none of it ever paid off in the way that it was supposed to in the theater. That's part of the problem. So now they have to second guess every single thing. Oh, we're going to do a New Gods movie. Oh, they're still talking about doing a Booster Gold movie. Yeah, sure. You know, it's all vaporware.
True. And then on the other side here, because I mean, you know, and also to move it forward a little bit, we got some casting news on the Wonder Woman sequel, and that is Kristen Wiig is set to play Cheetah. I would assume as the villain in this. There's some other details that have come up here with this, that the Wonder Woman sequel will be set during the Cold War 1980s.
Well, by the way, no, we're talking about DC, so she's not the villain. She's the little impish sidekick, like the Orko to Wonder Woman's He-Man. I do not remember the female Orko from She-Ra, otherwise I would have used that as an example, but she was just as annoying.
I find it interesting that they cast Kristen Wiig, not because she's a bad actor or anything like that, but because this is a left turn for her, you know, role wise. I mean, she hasn't done strictly like comedy roles, but she's done more independent roles in a lot of things.
She's done a lot of independent films. She's done dark comedies, even something that's strictly comedy in the way that Bridesmaids is. There's still an emotional depth to the depression that her character goes through in that.
Yeah.
Which I like Kristen Wiig a lot. I think that she can be incredibly funny when she wants to be funny. I think she's naturally funny. I think she's also naturally multi-talented. When you see her doing the dance portion of the Sia performance on SNL, when you see her writing things and doing other things that do feel like they're against her type. But the problem is we've only known her mostly from being introduced as Saturday Night Live alum and going from that to doing other comedy work, but her not as well publicized stuff, she's not concentrating strictly on comedy. And she left Saturday Night Live at a very high point when she could have stuck around a lot longer and just gone on to do nothing but comedies, doing Paul Feig stuff. I feel that she's very brave in the choices that she's made, because she could have just a very easy career of doing similar things. I'm not going to knock Melissa McCarthy. Melissa McCarthy's roles have all had a very comedic bent. Like I
Yeah.
haven't seen her go and do a drama really, other than being on Gilmore Girls or whatever. So like, and that's what Kristen Wiig could have done, but she didn't. It's still, I have bad memories of utilizing female characters and then giving them a female villain, and that female villain being very hammy. But then a lot of the male villains in male superhero movies have been very hammy throughout time. Like if you go back to the Supergirl movie from the 80s with Helen Slater, the villain characters in that were way over the top silly in a lot of ways. But then so was Lex Luthor, played by Hackman. So it's not fair to only judge female characters from that. But when you see that they're choosing somebody who does do comedy so well and so naturally, and you hear that she's going to be the villain in what was a sequel to a pretty serious movie and a well done movie, you wonder what was the inspiration there? What are they looking for taking this direction? Now, I remember Cheetah from the Super Friends cartoons, Challenge of the Super Friends, more specifically, growing up. And looking at the animation of that character, I can definitely see Kristen Wiig playing that version of that character, which was in the 70s and 80s, which is kind of awesome. I don't know that that's the direction they're going to go. But already, this being taking place during the Cold War in the 80s gives it a nostalgia vibe, which is in itself inherently silly in feeling. Without seeing what they're actually going to do with it, it conjures things in my head of like, well, the 80s really do look silly now. That's why the Goldbergs is such a great representation of it, because it's unbelievable the shit that we thought was okay back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I can only say it's because we're all really hungry, waiting for trickle-down economics to give us food. I'm hopeful in this because, again, the people who made the first Wonder Woman movie are the people making the second Wonder Woman movie. It may have been a fluke, or it may have been they know exactly what the fuck they're doing, and this could be absolutely fantastic. And I would rather lean towards giving credit and believing in them for what they've accomplished than pissing all over it because I can't imagine it being another way than it is in my head right now. And even in my head, that's not a bad flick. It's just a very different flick from what I see from the first Wonder Woman.
No, this isn't me pissing all over the fact that
I'm not saying you are.
Yeah.
I'm saying I could.
Yeah. It's because, I mean, I look at this and honestly, it seems weird because Kristen Wiig has mainly done comedies. Like I look back at like Jim Carrey or Robin Williams, where they did these other movies that were, more dramas, and it didn't really work the way that they wanted it to at times.
Sometimes it did. Like Robin Williams, you can't take away from Good Morning Vietnam, which was both a comedy and very heavy drama.
Yeah.
You have him in Good Will Hunting.
Oh,
like nobody would ever say that he couldn't do serious acting, but people for a long time saw Robin Williams and expected him to be one way. If you gave me Andy Samberg is the lead in the new Death Wish as opposed to Bruce Willis, I'm going to expect an Andy Samberg comedy movie with Death Wish as the name, as much as Baywatch was, related to the TV series, or Chips was related to the TV series. But then at the same time, we've got Bill Hader is going to be playing a hitman on an HBO series. And again, you think Bill Hader, comedically a genius, to me, one of the funniest people around. So in my head, I know what the show is. But is that all that it is? And is that all that he's capable of? He's probably capable of a lot more than what I've expected from him. And I feel like this is the same thing, is that just because you start in comedy doesn't mean that's all you can do. And it may not be the thing that you should necessarily do forever.
And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, I don't want, because I look at, I think it was Robin Williams' first, like his first couple serious roles, people were like, oh no, that was horrible. And this is going to be one of her first, more serious roles.
Certainly the most high profile of her.
Well, yeah, definitely the most high profile of it. And so I don't want this to be a setback for her because I mean, with what I've seen, like for example, the Skeleton Twins movie, some of the serious parts that she's doing in there, she is great at. Like she can, I know she can do the drama as well as the comedy. I don't know why I said those like I was the old, but my other question is, who do you think they would have her play? Would she be Priscilla Rich, the first Cheetah that William Moulton Marston created? Would she be Deborah Domain, which sounds like a dominatrix name?
Which leans more towards Marston's creating.
yeah. The Bronze Age Cheetah, or would she be the popular, current one of Barbara Ann Minerva? Because
that is the question. Or does she transfer? Is she like an amalgam of the three, like what you get in some of the other movies where they have to combine characters to make something that all makes sense?
Basically, who gets credit for creating her? Is it
do we feel like seeing a half woman, half cat person up on screen, is that going to is it going to take away from the agency of the Wonder Woman character that we got that was fighting in a very real war scenario to now, like, she fights a woman who's part cat? That's the thing. And the whole part of Wonder Woman that took me out of the film was the giant fucking Ares thing that looks like every DC film villain at the end, where it's just the ridiculousness of like, I have to beat up this thing that's like towering over everybody else and is in front of a fucking major green screen and is all digital. That removed me from what was otherwise a very intensely heartfelt film in a lot of ways. Or is she Cheetah in the fact that it's the character who we know is Cheetah in the comics, but isn't actually doing things like Cheetah in the comics? It's like Whiplash never really was Whiplash in Iron Man 2, and that's a horrible example anyways, but it's like Baron Zemo in Civil War was nothing like the Baron Zemo in the comics at all. Was just basically like a spy. Right. He was a spy kid with a fucking vendetta against the Avengers. And that's it.
I mean, one of the ways, honestly, because this is the way I would see doing it, would be you have, so this is set in the 80s. You go either with her as, like, she's on the Russian side, or she's, on, the other side. But I would almost say it would be better to go with her as the archaeologist. With the, what was it, DC Rebirth, they did this arc where Cheetah was Barbara, where she was Dr. Minerva again, and Wonder Woman was sitting there trying to save her from, going back to the Cheetah, as this whole other entity, inside her and all that stuff. I sort of like that a little bit more than what's, as a story, because there's a lot of great storytelling things that I could see them pulling here for the movie. I don't know. I'm not a writer, like, at all. I'm an idea guy, if anything. So, I mean, I could see them pulling stuff like that and it being really cool so that's where I would probably lean more towards the Dr. Barbara Ann Minerva, just because, I mean, we could see some really good, a good dichotomy to the character.
Yeah.
To where it's not just, I'm a bad guy. I mean, girl,
Yeah. You definitely don't want it to head towards the direction of the Halle Berry Catwoman movie.
Yeah.
Which is a legitimate worry. It's not a legitimate worry for the people who made the first Wonder Woman movie, but it is a legitimate worry for superhero movies in the past and them going towards that sort of thing. It's the real world feel of superheroes, which is strange. We're talking about people who have bullets bounce off of them, can fly, that live in fucking space and everything. Yet there's just a solid bit of reality in that somehow brings it all together. And that's what we want, is we want something that doesn't go over the top silly. Although there are times when I think that's okay. If they do that with Shazam's a character where I want that. Shazam's a character where I wanted to be as much for kids if not more so than it is for grown-ups. Shazam's a character that I want to see embrace things like the talking worm and Tawny Tiger and all the weird things that Shazam has had over the years, you know, and a fucking wizard that calls forth the names of the gods and just uses their first initials to make a magic word. You know, I want everything that I loved about Captain Marvel and Shazam as a kid to be in that movie. I don't have a problem with it if it somehow then still crosses over with the rest of the DC film universe, as long as they can be true to what that is and be true to whatever the rest of the DC film universe is supposed to be. But it feels like Wonder Woman has already established a feeling of what her films are in the first one. And you can definitely go off script with that, because look at, again, Thor 3, very different from the first two films.
Well, but then again, you can honestly say the same thing with Thor and Thor: The Dark World.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
I didn't feel like they were dissimilar enough. It almost felt too repetitive to the first one. Yeah. But if you look at Captain America, the First Avenger versus the Winter Soldier, huge change up in those movies.
Well, Iron Man 3, I think, I say that because no Thor movie has been directed by the same guy twice.
True. Absolutely true.
Yeah, which, I mean, leads us to our next story here. Thank you for the segue there, Corey. Because Thor Ragnarok director Taika Waititi has a new project. And I've been curious, honestly, myself, as a, big fan of his, what was his next thing going to be? Is he going to jump right back in, for Thor Ragnarok 2 or, whatever they call the Thor 4? And actually, it is a movie that he has been working on. It made the blacklist, the Hollywood blacklist in 2012, called Jojo Rabbit. Now, this movie, he's also going to be starring in it. So he's going to write, direct, and star in this movie, where he will play Adolf Hitler. Now, before you turn away, he's playing an imaginary version of Adolf Hitler for a 10-year-old boy who is desperate to join the ranks, join the dictator's ranks during World War II. It is a satire. It's not going to be, like, oh, here's a movie that's going to be great in Germany or anything like that. But it's because one of the things I saw in here that was really great is a quote that Waititi told The Wrap. In my version of the movie, a lonely boy's best version of his hero is really his dad. So it's touching in that part right there, because I mean, where he will be playing Hitler, it's really the guy's dad, because he's seeing, okay, he's in Germany getting all the propaganda, saying, oh wow, this charismatic guy, he's going to bring the nation, bring the world around, and then, but really it's like, it's just, Daddy, will you come play ball with me? Sort of deal. I know you have nothing to say about this, really, or you have.
So first of all, it's a Lego movie. No, I have a couple things. One, did you watch the second season of Preacher?
I didn't get all the way through it.
Okay, well, in the second season of Preacher, spoilers for everybody, there is the story arc of Arseface, who was sent to hell by Jesse Custer in the first season, and he spends all of the second season dealing with being in hell, and the one person that he has looking out for him that becomes his friend in it is Hitler. The actual Hitler. And it spends a lot of time humanizing the Hitler character. In a show like Preacher, it makes absolute sense that is something that they would do, because it's just so fucking horrible. And it's one of those things that just makes you want to spit at your TV. Like, don't humanize the most horrible fucking person that ever lived to modern societies. I mean, there's been other atrocities throughout history. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Madonna. But I'm not talking about Madonna. Well, anything past Material Girl. But my point is, Preacher's a show that can get away with that. I don't know if it really can get away with that. And I feel like the political climate, at least in America right now, we were getting a show briefly from the makers of Game of Thrones that was an alternate history where slavery never got abolished. And I'm sure that was going to have a lot of commentary about why slavery was awful and how we have mistreated African Americans throughout time and continue to today, and it was going to show parallels. I'm positive that's what they were going to go for, but just the idea of that show got people up in arms, got people pissed, got it taken off. Like, that show went the fuck away.
Yeah,
probably never be seen again. Well, Trump's America, maybe, but my point is that this is not right. And I don't want to say anything about Taika Waititi, and his idea is probably very genuine, and I'm sure it could be very cute. I just don't really feel like it's gonna fly here. Well, maybe where he's from in New Zealand, they're a little wacky. I like Flight of the Conchords, but I know what he's going for. I know what he's going for. It's not the real Hitler. He's not a good person. But we were talking about a kid who looks up to Hitler, and then creates a fantasy Hitler in his head. It's my fucking Hitler the Pooh is what it is. And you know what? I would rather see The Day the Clown Cried, and I really never want to see that fucking movie, than I do fucking Christopher Robin goose stepping down 100 Acre Wood. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't really know who's going to settle on distribution of this here in the States.
I can tell you who has.
I know who's agreed to it. I think they're gonna fucking lose it. I think it's gonna be a good old bomb.
Because here's the thing here, and this is, again, you're right, it could end up falling out, but it has been purchased back in December, I believe it was purchased by Fox Searchlight, which this is on track right now to be one of the first movies released from Fox Searchlight under new ownership.
I was really close with Hitler the Pooh, wasn't I?
Yes, you were. And so, it could be, that could play a factor into it, but I want to read you the synopsis of the first version of Jojo Rabbit, which was the one that was released, or was in the 2012 blacklist. And it goes like this: after being severely hurt by a grenade at a Hitler youth camp, a prideful and nationalistic 10-year-old boy discovers that his mother is hiding a 15-year-old Jewish girl in their house. That to me sounds like there could be more trouble to it than the other one. And it says this, and it gives the whole thing. Jojo Rabbit, by Taika Waititi, Thor Ragnarok, Hunt for Wilder People, blends his signature humor, pathos, and deeply compelling characters in a World War II satire about a 10-year-old boy who, ridiculed by his peers and misunderstood by his mother, can't quite figure out how to fit in. As the naive young German struggles to understand his place in an incredibly fascist regime, he resorts to an imaginary friend who can offer advice and help him cope. So yeah, it's one of those things that, like, I definitely get where you're coming from, and I do think that, but I think that Taika is the right person to walk this line with his humor. And will it be a hit with everyone? No. Will there probably be backlash? Yes. But at the same time, I look at it this way. I mean, he is not glorifying Hitler. He is not glorifying what happened at all. He is taking it and looking at it from a different perspective.
Right. And one of the things I want to say is that big Mel Brooks fan. Mel Brooks has done this many times throughout the years. Even little moments in, like, Indiana Jones, when they run into Hitler and he signs their book that they're supposed to be burning, and it's the notes that Indy's dad has, his notebook and everything, and all of a sudden it's got Hitler's signature in it. It's a funny moment. You can definitely do this. Quentin Tarantino is the kind of person who would do this. So I agree. Nothing should be off limits. In a world where people understand that fiction is just fiction and satire can be satire, and in skilled hands, something like this can absolutely be done. But I just wonder if right now the world is really actually able to accept it. I understand that people are, like, supporting him and they know that he's got a good vision, but just from the description, it sounds to me like something that is going to just get roundly attacked for good reason or no reason. and people are just going to want to see this go away.
Now, Corey, are you telling me that people on the internet are going to attack something for no reason whatsoever?
Well, I mean, it's not like Zack Snyder's directing it.
No, when provided with evidence that shows "quote unquote" wrongdoing, when they look at the full footage of a thing, they show that everything was done by the book. I'm actually talking about a specific movie that this happened to. The movie A Dog's Purpose. When that came out, there was "quote unquote" footage, but actually, no, I shouldn't say that's not the "quote unquote." There was uncut, undoctored footage. It was totally cut and doctored of a dog looking like it didn't want to do the stunt that it was, and all that stuff. But yet, here enough people just read the headlines and didn't actually watch the full unedited video where they show that no, the dog, they didn't force it in. They actually sat there and let it, get used to get used to what it had to do and all that stuff. And when it goes underwater, it only goes underwater for the split second, and then they cut and doggy comes back up.
Yeah, I know the footage you're talking about. I know exactly what you mean. And I saw the angry articles about that, and I kept saying, well, that seems very, forgive me, cut and dry, because it's like, it's just showing us one moment, and that moment looks really bad, but I'm sure that there's a beginning before that and an end after that, and there's a whole bunch of footage that we're not seeing. I know that is what the internet does, but that's exactly my point. The internet's not in the mood to get things right. It's to get outraged. This is offensive to me because of what I see in my head, not because of what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
And that's my point, is that it's not about if he's going to make an excellent piece of satire that is, enhancing the message of Hitler's fucking awful. Not that needs much enhancing, but it seems like these days some people might have gotten their signals crossed on that. But I look at it as he's not going to get the chance to show what his vision is.
Yeah.
I just don't trust the world at large to let this happen at this point.
Yeah. So the last bit of news that we have is that Jon Favreau, Happy Hogan from the Iron Man, the Marvel movies, last seen in Spider-Man Homecoming, packing up Stark Tower, is set to executive produce and write a live-action Star Wars TV series. This is the TV series, or one of the TV series that will be on Disney's new direct-to-consumer platform. So the Disney Network, or whatever, the House of Mouse, whatever they're going to call the thing that is going to charge, hopefully, like $10. It's not going to be something super outrageous, and it's going to have stuff that's actually going to make me want to watch this, and not be like, I'm going to stick to Hulu. But he's going to be doing a live-action show, and that's, honestly, I'm excited for this. I've loved a lot of his work. I actually have his IMDb filmography on there, which are including his acting roles, which is throwing me. But I mean, I felt like he was really good. He's done a lot of really good stuff, with his directing work. Like I just rewatched his pilot for About a Boy that aired on NBC, and I loved that episode. He directed I didn't even know he directed the pilot for Young Sheldon. That was actually solid. But yeah, I mean, he's done, like, a lot of the stuff that he's directed, I've enjoyed. Now, have there been things that I've missed? Yeah, but I mean, I think this is going to be great. Him doing.
Well, it's also how my entire life, essentially, I've been waiting for a Star Wars TV series, a live-action Star Wars TV series. We had the Ewoks movies and the Christmas special. Those don't really count for anything, but where we're at right now, what we could get is potentially at a level of at least the early Star Wars films for how they can make the stuff look on TV. When you see what they've done with Game of Thrones and some other big budget shows, depending on how much they want to throw into this could be incredible. I haven't watched the new Star Trek series Discovery, but what I saw of the first half of the pilot that aired on CBS, it looked really good.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that I caught up on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. the last couple of weeks. I also watched the first half of Jessica Jones' second season the other day while I was sick. and there's still a level of TV stuff of what we see when it's superpowers, when it's extraordinary things, and it's okay. You know, our expectations are really high. But I grew up watching things like The Greatest American Hero, and it's pretty obvious, you know, when they had him with his stomach on some fucking thing and he was in front of a green screen and pretend shake flying everywhere. And that was okay with me. I remember My Secret Identity with Jerry O'Connell. I put up with things, but now our tastes have gotten more sophisticated and we have a higher expectation from these things. If they meet those expectations, if they make a Star Wars TV series that builds in the universe without just copying the same shit that's happened before, actually expands it and looks comparable to what you would see in a movie, man, that is a game changer. That is seriously something that sells a fucking service from day one. Where and that's what Star Trek Discovery did for a lot of people. As I didn't sign up for the CBS streaming, but a lot of people did because of that show, because it's Star Trek and because it was a reasonable quality show. Now, Beat will tell you his opinions on whether or not it was good. And since I haven't watched it, I can't. But I know a lot of people who were very into it and 100% would never have signed up for CBS streaming service if not for that show. This is the show that would get, I think, even more people to sign up for a Disney service on top of everything else that they're going to wind up offering. This is like, boom, instant yes for at least the first few months, because nobody's going to want to miss this.
So here's my question for you, because this sort of works in a weird, you have to connect some dots sort of way. The pilot episode for the Orville, did you like it?
No.
Nope.
Okay,
well then fuck it. You're not gonna like the show because he directed the pilot for the Orville.
Yeah, but my problem with the show wasn't the direction.
Yeah, it was the writing.
It was definitely the writing.
Yeah. So I mean, so probably a bad example, but so if you liked the direction part of it, you'll probably like. But then again, it's not questioning his direction on it,
because it looked great. But I mean, how much of that is effects and everything else? The costumes, the sets, it all adds up to a lot of different things. No, this is Jon Favreau is to me a very good filmmaker and someone that I've liked as an actor for a long time. Someone as I like who interviews people about filmmaking and things. I've watched his shows when he had that series where he was talking to people in Hollywood and stuff. I like Jon Favreau a lot. Yeah. And I think he's a very capable director, writer, everything. I don't have a question about his ability to do good storytelling, but this is really way, way more about it being Star Wars.
Yeah,
true. That's it. And at a point in time when we could be getting really fucking burnt out on Star Wars, just like we should be really fucking burnt out on superhero movies, and we'll have to see what Solo does coming up. And by the time this comes out, probably episode 9 will have already happened. So we could be at a point where Star Wars is less endearing to the fans, but I don't know. We made it through the prequels.
Yeah. So here's what I think will save it. If it's not focused on a known character.
Right.
Because honestly, you look at the anime. I mean, okay, Clone Wars is the exception to it. But you look at the Clone Wars, you look at Star Wars Rebels. Both of those are, now granted, Star Wars, the Clone Wars, it focused in on Obi-Wan and Anakin, but it focused a lot more on Ahsoka.
Which is the one character that I think that it could be about that would actually be a benefit as opposed to a hindrance.
Yeah, and then, Star Wars Rebels, yes, it did have, Darth Vader and Princess Leia and some other characters like that in it. They were guest spots. It was not about those characters.
It wasn't about the Skywalker legacy.
Yeah, exactly. It was about, this other, the other people that we see that are just, oh, this is Daniel Craig in an outfit, or this is, Simon Pegg, sweating his balls off inside of a creature costume. It's one of those things where you're getting these, it's it's filling in this stuff of the Skywalker saga. But I feel like you can go even further than that and go, fucking hell, you look at the Star Wars database, and there's such a world there, a universe there, that, I mean, you could tell stories and not run into another character, ever again, and all, and all that stuff.
And that's the thing. I enjoyed Rogue One because it told a story that I didn't know, even though it related to a story that I very much did know.
Yeah.
And it finished off leading directly into that story. So in a way, what the ending is, kind of, but not 100%. But it introduced all these different characters, and it did great world building, and it wasn't a repetition. So I enjoyed that more than what I expect I will of Solo. Even if Solo is more of a movie story that I would like, because it seems like it's more heistish, it's rogues, it's the kind of thing. It's Firefly. That's the kind of thing that I dig. But I think that I would appreciate Rogue One more because of the fact that it is doing something with different characters, and it's not so heavily leaning on Vader and Skywalker and Obi-Wan and all these things that, honestly, I think we put too much stock in for. I know that they're important to the original Star Wars trilogy, but I don't think they should be what every trilogy is about, because it takes the mystery out of it. Like the whole thing of the prequels, to me, the problem is that we already know Vader being Vader. And him as Anakin wasn't as interesting, certainly wasn't more interesting than him as Vader. Vader's a cool character. I don't give a fuck about Vader pre-Vader. That story means nothing to me, because Vader was cool and Anakin made Vader less cool. Just like how in Chasing Amy, the guy describes Vader being all badass because he's black, and then as soon as they take off his fucking helmet and he's a white guy, it ruins the fucking character. I don't necessarily believe that that's exactly the case, but it is a moment of like, oh well, shit. I really wanted to see James Earl Jones come out of that. I know it makes no sense, but fucking hell, it's space.
So okay, so I'll ask this question, then we're gonna wrap up the story, or wrap up the news segment here. You have basically the 9 films here.
By the way, if Mace Windu was Luke's dad, Luke wouldn't be such a little bitch.
Exactly. No, you're right. You're right. So you got the 9. Like let's just say that they quit doing Star Wars episodes after 9. Do you want to see this TV show take place before or after the 9 movies? Because I'll put it to you this way: before, what a lot of people would say is, oh, then it's going to be the Knights of the Old Republic. Which a lot of people want. Yeah, which a lot of people want. Where after, you have a lot of the expanded universe that's now in the Star Wars Legends category now, where there's a lot of stuff in there that's really good. And, a lot of people would like to see stuff, honestly, a lot of people would like to see that pulled into the movies now. Let's put it this way. Doing the Knights of the Old Republic, you have a lot of possibilities. Doing it after episode 9, you have endless possibilities. So I don't know. I certainly don't hate telling a story that we don't know any real details of and doing something fresh and new from that. But I'm less interested in a Game of Thrones prequel than I am a Game of Thrones sequel. Not that I'm necessarily jumping up and down for any of them, because I feel like once Game of Thrones is done, if they finish it well, then you just got a really great series, and why fuck around with that? It's Star Wars. You want to watch some more Game of Thrones? Well, rewatch Game of Thrones. Right. Well, it's like saying, well, you like fucking Avengers movies? We've already had 2. But I wouldn't mind 2 more. Instead of like the whole, oh, we're going to do a prequel, focus on this character for the Game of Thrones thing. Right. Like, yeah. And that's, if you do it good enough, with the ending, then instead of going, and George R.R. Martin finally, if ever, finishes the books, which, by the way, I love that little bit in Logan Lucky, where they actually hit on that. And they're like, man, it's bullshit. Like, the prisoners are like, their ransom demands are the final 2 books. I haven't seen Logan Lucky yet, and I was looking for it, actually. Yeah, it's dumb humor, but it's
Right,
good.
but I'm
I
cool with that.
rented it. I rented it on like through Google Play credit, where I rented it for $1. And that's one of the scenes as they're holding the prison guards hostage so that they can do the whole bank heist thing. It's like, we want the final 2 books. They're like, I'm sorry, but the last books have been delayed. Man, George R. R. Martin was keeping pace. Like, well, I'm sorry, I'm reading from the Wikipedia page.
So basically, like you're doing a podcast in this movie because that's what I figured out. Is like any deeply nerdy conversation. It's just a podcast. It's just a podcast where nobody's recording it, but that's all it is.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I'd have to agree with you. Honestly, I don't know where they could do it. I mean, they could do anywhere. I figured I'd just ask you your opinion on it. But yeah, so that's going to do it here for the news.
I'm just hoping for a Greedo love story.
Exactly. Just Greedo's wife just going, that bastard shot first. My Greedo was just going to threaten him. It was empty. But yeah,
that's why they don't have kids, because Greedo's been shooting first and it's empty in bed too. She's seeing Hammerhead on the side.
And that is going to do it for the news, and we will be right back.
For more on this Galactic Network podcast, go to gncast.com. That's GNCASTS.com.